welcome everybody joining us for our live event this afternoon. I can see a few of you are joining the call now. So I'll just give it a few moments for everyone to get themselves online, ready to listen in. This is part of our Placed Academy Insights, which is a series of free live events, free webinars for young people interested in the built environment. And each Monday, we've had a panel of professionals from across the sector come in and talk a little bit about their work experience, their career journey up to now, and offer you a little bit of advice and top tips about getting into the industry. So today we've got a very exciting panel. Our focus for this session is all about a portfolio. What is a portfolio? And how do you make a portfolio? What kind of things do you put in a portfolio? Why? So we're going to be thinking about that and asking some questions to our panelists on sort of how we can get started on a portfolio. If you have a question that you'd like to ask them during the session, you need to type your question in the Q&A box, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. And if someone else types a question in there that you want to know the answer to as well, then I encourage you to like that question, because that will help it go back up to the top, so I know which questions to start with. So a few of you have come along to a few of these sessions. They are brought to you by Placed, and we are a social enterprise. We work all across the Northwest, engaging people from local communities in conversations about the places that they live and work, what they love about those places, what they'd like to improve and change. We also run an education programme called Placed Academy, and you can find out more information about that on our website, including the next one, which will be starting up very soon. So make sure you head to the website to have a look about that programme and see if it's something that you're interested in applying for. It's a free programme, so definitely go and check it out and see if it's for you. Okay, so we're going to make a start on our session today. Just to let you know, we're recording the session, but we can't see you or hear you for your own safety. The way that you're going to communicate is through that Q&A box. So we have, as our panelists today, we have Anna Davies, who's an architect for David Miller Architects in Liverpool. We have Beth Houston, a graduate landscape architect for Sistra UK. And then finally, we have Nicola Donnery, architect for Falconer Chester Hall, FCH, architects in Liverpool. So we're going to start with Anna, who's going to share her screen. Each of our panelists will be presenting a few slides for you to see over 10 minutes, and then we'll open out to some questions once we've heard from all three of them. So Anna, when you're ready, start us off.
Okay, can everyone see the screen?
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
Okay, good.
Anna, sorry, we've just lost you, sorry.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, that's great.
Okay, there we go. As India said, I work for David Miller Architects, and we have we're an architectural practice, and we have an office in London and lastly in Liverpool. Here is a picture of us in Liverpool. I don't know if you recognise where we are. We're about 30, so we're a kind of small to medium-sized practice, and we specialise in digital design. And you can see here the kind of range of project sectors that we work in. So housing, education, sports. Again, you might recognise that if you're a keen cricket fan. Just a little bit of context about me, in case it helps in terms of what you're thinking for your portfolio. For my AS levels, I had to remind myself what I did, but I actually did art, biology, PE, and design and technology. So you can see it's a real mix. So my point is, please don't worry if you haven't picked specialist things towards architecture or anything really in engineering in the built environment. You can always manage to put something together for your portfolio. So that brings me on to the topic today. So what is a portfolio? It's basically a collection of material that you bring together to demonstrate your ability and your skills. So when you have to apply for university or if you're looking for employment, a portfolio is a really good way of showing off your talent. And you'll also be asked for it in your applications as well, mostly. This year, and I suppose last year, and potentially going forward, it's a little bit different because I guess most things will be digital as opposed to physical copies. So that's something to bear in mind. But maybe when you're asked to go for an interview, hopefully when we're allowed, then it will be a physical portfolio. So I've shown here some examples of portfolios. So you could see that the portfolio could just be a booklet, A4 or A3 with different images in it. Or it could be a portfolio that's like plastic or leather bound, where you create your pages, stick images together. This is the kind of thing that I did for my portfolio when I was at school, applying for university. And then you've got your digital portfolios. So this could be using any kind of software that you feel most comfortable in, but I suppose on the basic level, it could just be a PDF. And then you've also got websites, which I'm sure you're all marvelous at, and I am not, but it's a very good way of showing off your skills. So what should you put in a portfolio? So it's really anything that's creative. And please don't think there's a wrong or right answer because there really isn't. So I've got some examples that may be a little bit more unusual you hadn't thought of, but if you do any logo design, sculpture, photography, sketches, obviously, but even maybe some of your Sims or any of your kind of gaming computer things. Obviously, I'm not very down with the lingo here, so apologize if I'm making massive mistakes. Pretend like I know what I'm talking about. But really anything that does show off how you can apply yourself to looking at space, things in 3D, and composition on pages. So I asked some members of our practice, who are the younger members, to sort of give me some examples of what they put together for their portfolios, because mine has been lost in the history of time. So these are actual examples from our practice. This is a girl's art piece that she did for her coursework. And down the bottom, you can see, again, art, but 3D, ceramics, and logos. I think the key for portfolios is less is more. So please select your best work. I don't know what everyone else is going to advise on the panel, but I think 6 to 10 pages is enough to show off what you can offer. And also think about when you're putting it together, how it flows in a logical manner. Maybe think of it as a story and practice how you present it so you know how it runs. So usually images you might gather from your school coursework, but perhaps that doesn't apply to you. So maybe you have some other passions or passions within design that you could use that's not part of your schoolwork. So I've just tried to show some examples here. Photography, again, building up at the bottom here, I said, remember that including your developmental work is just as powerful as your finished piece, because it shows your thinking and your, I can't say the word, but mythology, anyway, we'll come back to that, that word. So you can see here that it's your design process and how you apply your thinking to your work, and it's really important. So furniture, fashion, any kind of creative pieces that you've got. Also sketching. So if you're a bit worried that you might be lacking in your portfolio, now is the time to pick up a pen and paper and just go for walks and try and sketch, because you're only going to get better. So these are some, again, examples from our office, and they are obviously really, really good. But you can see that on the bottom here, they're kind of quicker sketches that you can put together, which are really powerful. And photography. So if you are thinking about the built environment, then you could look at your favorite buildings, places you've been, show examples, because it helps to highlight your passion, and your kind of, it gives you a chance to sort of talk about your knowledge of those buildings. And if you like to read, you could maybe add some of the books that would be related to the built environment as well. I can't claim I've read all of these, by the way, but there's some of the ones that our practice again said were quite good. I particularly like this as a kind of mantra to live by. So these are examples of the kind of work that you'll be doing at university. I'm showing these not to scare you or to worry you. It's really just to show this would be the level that you would be trying to achieve at university. So it kind of gives you a little insight into what you'd be producing and how people present their design work at university. So you can see that they use sketches, but also models and photos of models. 3D computer work, if you do that in your school, and that's great, or if you can do it at home, show something of that. And then these are just basic plans, but you can see how they're quite diagrammatic, but they come across really well. And again, this one, I really wanted to show you how using models can be quite powerful. So even if you're not the best at drawing, you can always work in 3D in different ways. And also Photoshop, which I'm sure you're all excellent at. So that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Anna. It was really great to see all those different types of, those different examples of photography and modeling and sketches and paintings. And yeah, it was really helpful to see what a range of different things you might want to include in your portfolio. So thank you so much for starting us off on that. If you have any questions that come to your mind while you're listening, please just type them in the Q&A box. No question's a silly question, just go for it. And now I'm going to try and share, Beth, your presentation. Hello,
everybody. My computer isn't behaving, so India's going to do my presentation for me, hopefully.
Can you see that? Is it on full screen? Yeah.
There we go. There's me looking slightly younger. Okay, so just a quick introduction to begin with. So my name's Beth Houston, and I'm a graduate landscape architect, and I work at Sistra UK. And my journey into becoming a landscape architect was slightly different to maybe some other people. I didn't study it at university originally. I come from a fine art sculpture background. So after I did my undergrad, I then went and did my PGCE in art and design and became an art teacher for 15 years. And so landscape architecture for me is a new venture, and is just as nerve-wracking, I think, for me to get into, as I'm sure some of you are feeling about starting out in your careers and building your portfolios to get into the built environment. So really, I wanted to try and focus this portfolio presentation on some of the things that Anna's already mentioned, about trying to be professional in your portfolio, trying to think about the layout and including skills that you think your future employer or future course you're applying to are looking for, but also thinking about your portfolio as a point of discussion, because that's really what it is. It's about you trying to talk to people about your skills and trying to find out about whether they are the right place for you to go and visit. So it's about trying to promote individuality as well as fitting in. So I'm going to try and talk through the work, a selection of work from my own portfolio. So they're extracts from my master's qualification that I got this past year. And I'm going to try and talk to you about drawing in particular. So can I have the next slide, please, India? Thank you. Okay, so I've popped this slide in because this is a title page on the left. And I just think it's quite important when you start your portfolio to have some sort of visual. As soon as somebody opens it up and looks at it, you can pick whatever you want. It's a good opportunity to have your name there and to just give whoever's reading it a good idea of what it is they're about to see. You can have a summary and a contents page, which would give you an opportunity to maybe give the reader a bit more of advanced detail about what it is you want to try and show them, especially at the moment during COVID, when you might not have as much of an opportunity to sit down and have a face-to-face discussion. So can I have the next slide, please, India? Thank you. So this first slide really is to try and show you that throughout the portfolio, it's quite good to try and have a balance of different types of drawings. So on the left of this page, you can see there's like map drawings, which would outline a location for the project that I was trying to present. I'm not going to talk about the projects in any detail as we go through, actually. I'm just going to try and talk about the layout and what's included. So when I use my portfolio, I try to use things like formatting in colour bands to connect pages together, so that whoever's looking at them knows that these two pages belong to the same project. I can't use my mouse to show you, but in the top right, there's 3 images there. And just as Anna was saying before about not being frightened to show your thought processes, these are concept sketches. So they're really early sketches, really early on in the idea development for a design. And I've put them in, and very recently had quite a lot of interviews, and it's this sort of drawing that a lot of the interview panel were really interested in, most of all. So always be confident about your thought processes. Don't worry about everything looking like the finished piece. So next slide, please, India. Again, this is a similar example of using concept sketches across the top. But these here I've included painting and collage, and I'm sure that you will be familiar with those sorts of techniques from school. And I, coming into the industry late on, had lots of traditional skills, and I was a bit scared as to whether I would be allowed to use them to begin with. But I've now found out that within the built environment, people love it when you can draw. So you need to practice drawing as much as possible, and your painting, and take on any approach that you think suits you and that you feel confident using. I think it's worth pointing out on this slide as well, if you try and mirror the layout on both sides and keep everything really simple, and not be frightened to leave large areas of space on your portfolio, because what space does is it means that everybody can see the images that you really want them to be looking at, and it gives you a little bit of focus. So can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Okay, so I've popped this one in because these are 3D drawings. The ones on the left, the 4 on the left, this is a concept sketch model. So here I was looking at movement in the landscape. It was in a particular public realm scheme that we were looking at, and how people might move around a marketplace. So drawings don't have to be on paper; they can be practical things. And then I've balanced that on the right hand side with a 3D model that's much more measured and technical and to scale. So again, like Anna said, not wanting to scare you, because when you develop into an architect, landscape architect, urban designer, you'll get used to these sorts of processes, and you'll learn how to do these sorts of drawings that are a bit more to do with measurement and getting everything just right. Okay, can I have the next slide, please? This is a collection of digital sketches. So I just wanted to talk about going out and observing, because some drawings we do to communicate with other people. It might be to communicate your aspirations about a design or what you want to actually do in a landscape, but sometimes it is just about understanding an environment. So it's really good to get out and get practicing all the time. So these were some that I did at the start of a project, and I've put them in because they're very selective. They look at very simple lines, and I think it's good when you're drawing to try and think about reducing down the information that you document. Think about just a few different things each time you do a drawing, rather than trying to get everything on the paper. Sometimes that's a bit of an impossible task. Next slide, please. And these drawings come from the same project, but obviously look very different. And I suppose this is an example now of how your portfolio might have a balance of drawings that are about informing yourself, and then drawings that are about informing other people. So these are infographics, and these are things that you will learn to do when you get to college and university, and they've got a very focused function. Okay, so they're about communicating very specific information about the built environment. Next slide, please, India. And this is from the same project again. So these are visualizations. So again, another purpose for doing your drawing. And the drawings across the top, there's 3 on the left and 3 on the right, 2 on the right. Some visualizations here are done in by hand and then developed digitally. And then some of them are done on Photoshop. And again, I'm sure you can do a much better job of the Photoshop than me. But the idea of these drawings is to really sort of give you a sense of what it would be like to be in the environment that I've drawn there, the environment I've designed. And at the bottom, you've got, again, a balance of a very measured plan to scale drawing. And the one on the bottom right is called a section line. So that's like slicing the landscape, right, like slicing an orange in half. Okay, so you get to see what the contours and the shapes are like from the side, which is really interesting to learn how to do. Next slide, please. I'm not sure how I'm doing for time now. Okay, so this is the last sort of 3 slides are all from the same project. And again, there's some drawing here that's observational drawing. And there's some drawings that have used information from maps to put them together. If we could flip to maybe to not the next one, but the one after, India, if that's okay. Yeah, okay, I think I'll finish on this slide. So again, here I've gone out into the landscape and done lots of studies. And I think it's really important to go out and understand places. When you're working in the built environment, I think that is absolutely key. So the more you can get out and about, the more you can document how you feel about being in different places, what the positives are, what the negatives are. That gives you a really good idea then about what your next move might be as you develop your ideas. So yeah, if I was to summarize for your portfolio, I'd say make sure you inject your personality. Don't be afraid to show your thought processes. Regularly record your surroundings and celebrate your strengths as much as possible. I think that's it from me.
Thank you so much, Beth. It was really interesting to see the variety of the same site, but different types of visuals to show that site that you've been working with, and also some really great top tips there about getting out in the environment and kind of asking yourself how you feel in those places and spaces, because then that will influence then what you're going to end up putting into your portfolio. And now Nicola. So thank you for your questions, everybody. They're coming in, which is great. So we'll just hear from Nicola before we start having a look at some of those questions.
Can you see that, India?
Yeah, that's perfect.
So as India said, my name is Nicola and I'm an architect at Faulkner Chester Hall Architects in Liverpool, and I studied architecture at university. So what is a portfolio? A portfolio is a collection of your work. So because of that, it's going to vary from person to person. And a portfolio is a tool which allows us to communicate and demonstrate our skills, strengths, creative abilities, and our interests relevant to the subject area or discipline that we're thinking of working in. So in the case of architecture, this would be the built environment, but design, making, and creative thinking in general. I've used a portfolio throughout my career, right through from applying to university and applying for jobs today. And it's something that I'll continue to use whilst I'm working in architecture. And because of this, my portfolio changes over time. So as I complete a stage of my education or I move to a new job, I replace pages in the portfolio with new pieces of work to show my sort of career development and to make sure it's up to date. So your first portfolio might contain work that you've created as part of your schoolwork, or perhaps drawings that you've done in your spare time. Once I moved on to university and I started to gain experience working in practice, it combined sort of both. So I had academic work and professional work. But now that I've been qualified as an architect for a number of years, it largely contains professional work. So my portfolio has a couple of different elements to it, like Anna was saying at the beginning. I have a printed copy, which previously I would have taken to in-person interviews. I also have a digital version that I might attach to any applications that I'm making online. And if you're doing this, then you might consider whether you need to scan in any non-digital artwork, such as a painting or a drawing, or take any photographs of any 3D pieces, like a model or a sculpture. And then there's the verbal presentation. Whilst this isn't fixed, ahead of an interview, I like to think about the key points of each image so that I'm comfortable talking through my work with other people. The final point I'd make on this slide is that my portfolio isn't always fixed. So if I'm applying to, for example, in your case, you might be applying to different universities. Whilst the main body of work might be the same, I might swap out certain pieces, or the number of pages might vary depending on the requirements of that application. So what might a portfolio include? These 6 art forms on the left-hand side are taken from an RIBA brochure called Think Architecture, and that was created by the RIBA for anyone considering a career in architecture. And if you'd like to read it, you can download it from their website. I've also put on here other media, and I think if you're thinking of applying to a specific university, you might have a look to see whether there are any other sort of techniques that they would like to see, or they may have sort of detailed guidance. So you could start researching this by looking on their websites. If they have a really long, varied list of optional techniques, I don't think you need to feel like you need to include all of them, because as Anna and Beth both said, your portfolio should contain your best work, not all of your work. So taking just one of these as an example, because in that brochure I was talking about, they place a focus on drawings, but also including a variety of work and work that's relevant to architecture, so design. These are 4 drawings from a graduate portfolio. So whilst you might not have architectural work like this, there are aspects of these drawings which I think are still relevant. So each drawing in my portfolio has a purpose, and that sort of is trying to show a different skill or strength that I'd like to get across. So the first drawing on the left is a diagram, and as Beth and Anna both said, this was about the concept, it was about the idea, and it was trying to demonstrate what the design, what the sort of thought process was as part of a wider project. The second is a perspective, and this focuses on form, space, and light. The third was an illustration, and similar to what Beth was saying, it was about observing a place and thinking about movement. So that was an illustration based on that, sort of an observational drawing, if you like. And the final one is a detail drawing. So that's really about scale and measurement, but also describing how things fit together. So all of those aspects, they don't just apply to buildings, they can apply to many things. Okay, so how might you start putting a portfolio together? I think it takes time to put a portfolio together, and some people find it helpful to see it as a creative exercise in itself. So one way I like to start is by using a storyboard and getting all my ideas down on paper. So I first like to think about the criteria of the application that I'm applying to. So are they looking for a specific number of pages, or do I need to include a cover sheet with contact information or a reference number, things like that? Is there anything that they're asking me to do? I then like to think about my skills and strengths, and then look at all the pieces of work that I have and identify the best pieces, and then check back and say, do these pieces reflect those skills and strengths? Because I'm trying to demonstrate them in the work. And I also want to make sure that I'm showing versatility. So have I got a variety, like we talked about, the paintings, drawings, models, things like that. And finally, as the others have both said, I like to think about the layout. Will the page contain one full-sized image, or is it actually a smaller collection of images that work together? And then, of course, there's the order of the pages. So this is an example of a sample portfolio that I put together when I was applying for a job after my master's degree. And there's a couple of things I thought we could just run through. So I've got here a mix of different types of drawings. So I've got drawings, I've got models. I've also got a mix of 2D and 3D pieces. And as both Anna and Beth said before, there's processed work, which is still to a high level of quality, and final drawings. And of course, I've got digital and hand drawings here as well. So I think a couple of other things I would say is that if you are taking pictures of any work, just try and get it to be the best quality as you can. Try and avoid any blurry images. I also think it's helpful because if you're applying online, you're not going to be there to discuss your work when the person first sees it. So I think it can be helpful to have some level of annotation. That doesn't need to be a paragraph as shown here. It can simply be a couple of bullet points. It might have the title of the work. It might have a sort of brief point about the process or idea, and perhaps the media. So that might be the type of drawing, for example, a still life drawing, but also the material that you use, so pen and ink or pencil on paper, that kind of thing. Just a little bit of annotation to get across your ideas. So I would suggest having a go at preparing your portfolio. I think attending events like today are really helpful to see examples, and you could continue to look at examples. Your art teacher may be able to show you some past work, and also getting feedback. Once you've got some information together, I think getting people's opinions can be really helpful. And yeah, I think I was just going to end by saying that if you're thinking of adding to your portfolio, or perhaps you're sort of starting to get some work together, I think despite the current restrictions, there are things you can do even within the home. So sketching interior spaces or pieces of furniture, or perhaps even a view from your window. I think all those things have really interesting aspects to it. And people often say, to practice sketching and to keep a sketchbook with you. And I think the point there is, whilst they often mean, when you leave the house, take a sketchbook with you, I think the message really is just about practicing. So even if you are just starting in your local area, sort of in external spaces, I think that it's a really good way to start. Yeah, and that's the final slide of my presentation, India.
Thank you so much, Nicola. That was so informative. Yeah, loads of information in there, loads of helpful advice. I think also great that you highlighted that a portfolio is a changing thing, and you might adapt it and change what you put in that depending on who you're presenting it to. Really important to remember that. So yeah, and some really great tips there at the end for our young people to get started on having a go at producing some work that they might want to include in a portfolio. So we'll go straight to your questions that have been coming in. So I'm going to start with Okay, so our number one question at the top that's been liked by 6 other people is it better to have more evidence of research or of artistic ability, or is it just evidence of interest that makes a difference? That's a very good question, isn't it? I would imagine it's a combination of both, but does anyone have a response to that they'd like to give? Beth?
I'll give a bit of advice.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to research a subject, which is obviously based on your interests, but it's also really important to show how you respond to that. And I think have the research in there, but your response is, I think, is the most interesting thing to pursue in your portfolio, and yeah, just try and explore that in maybe a wider context. So have your initial research based on what interest it is, and then maybe try and find other people who have a similar opinion to you, or maybe someone who has a very different opinion to you, and try and maybe communicate that tension in some way in your portfolio, so you can actually discuss that with somebody if you were to have an interview. That's my
Great, thank you, Beth. I guess there is like a little bit of nervousness around artistic ability, but I feel like the message that's coming from all 3 of you is just practice, just keep going with it. And I think the fact that there's a variety of ways you can produce different visuals, be that in 3D model or photographs or actual sketches, so it's about just doing it, just practicing. Okay, so our next question up here is, what do you think is better, a digital or physical portfolio? Anna, can I ask you?
Sorry, I just had a child shouting in the background. So
Oh.
Anyway, it's finished now. Yes, it's a good question. It's really to do with who you're applying to, I think, and what they need. So often, if it's a job interview, they will say, can you send me an example, maybe before you go to the job interview? So you would have to give them something digital. And then now I think for universities and colleges, they will need something digital first, because you won't be able to probably meet face-to-face straight away. So I think probably the emphasis at the moment would be more on the digital side. But that doesn't mean that anything that you've done in the physical world, you can't evidence with photographs and pop it into the digital portfolio. So yeah, that would be what I would say at the moment. I think with digital, something to bear in mind, you'll be emailing it probably or uploading it onto something. So you've got to think about the file size. I know it's really basic, but it's something that can go wrong basically every day when we issue information. You know, don't make it over 8 megs, and it will be, because you'll have some high quality images. So if you do think about how you're going to give that information to the people, so they can actually download it and receive it.
And have you got a suggestion, Anna, of ways around that?
Oh, well, I guess it's probably, you want to make it as high quality as possible. So you don't really want to be lowering the quality of the images, but perhaps when it's all together, just check the file size. If it depends on what software you're using, but if you just check whether it's under 8 megs, if you're emailing, and if it's over 8 megs and you can't make it any lower, then you'd use like WeTransfer or something like that, so you can send them a link that they can then download it. So that's what we do.
Thank you. Okay, next question.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah, sorry, Beth. Yeah.
If school have got Creative Suite and they are teaching you in design, you can publish your portfolio online as well and provide a link, which is sort of goes around the problem of having to reduce the size. So that's what I did with mine, and it seemed to work quite well.
Yeah, that's a good way around it, isn't it? So then it's kind of always there, and you just sort of send a link to where it will be. Kind of on that, there's another question that came up actually, which was around size, and it was asking, how big should your portfolio be for a university application? Do we have a response on that? Do we know? Is there a set size? Or
I guess there is no set size, but I mentioned like 8 to 10 pages. I don't know if Beth or Nicola think any different. It's really down to your own, like what the work you have and how best it shows off. But I think keeping it as concise as possible is better.
I think I would echo what Anna said. The only thing I would possibly add was just to check any requirements. Sometimes with university applications, they're very specific about the number of pages. There might be a range and some might vary. So I would always, like I was saying in my presentation, I'd be slightly flexible. So you might not just have one PDF that is sent to different people. You might have some favorite images, and then if someone's asking for a couple more, then you may have, you know, some more favorite images that you add in.
Yeah, okay, important to remember. So check if they've specified how many. If not, a rough guidance is 8 to 10 pages. We've just had sorry, Beth.
I think it's worth mentioning as well, within the 10, or if you've got more, if you can go up to 15. If you feel like there is work that's stronger, it's always good to sort of put that at the start and the end of the document, so that they start really excited and really excited as well about your work. So
at the start and the end. So you're ending on your strength. You're beginning with your strengths and you're ending with your strengths. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. So Nicola, I'm going to throw this one at you, but how important are portfolios in obtaining a job within design? And the reason I'm asking you is just because you did touch on that a little bit by showing that last example of one you put together for a job application. So why is that, you know, how important is that?
Yeah, I think definitely important. It's a portfolio is something I've always used throughout when I've ever applied for a job, and it's sort of worked in conjunction with my CV. So my CV might say, I have a skill in this, and then in words, and then the portfolio is an opportunity for me to be able to, in a visual way, demonstrate that. So almost, if you like, giving some evidence that, yes, see, I've said that I can do this, and this is how I'm showing that you can do it. But it also, I think, enables you to stand out. So, and as the others have said, it's a very individual document. So they're your sort of strengths, your sort of interests in this subject. So it's your opportunity to sort of share that. And then if you do get through to an interview stage, it's really the basis of the discussion, and they kind of feed off the work that you've got. So you might go to an interview and you've got your portfolio in front of you, whether that be in person or online, like this platform we're using today. It's a kind of enables you to have a discussion, and you might find that you've got shared interests, or they might have done a similar piece of work, and it kind of bounces back the conversation. So yeah, I think they're really, really important.
Yeah. So really important. Thank you. That was and great.
It should really be an enjoyable process to put it together. Like I was trying to say, if you see it as a creative exercise in itself, you should enjoy putting it together. Yeah, definitely.
But however, on that, there's a few questions that have come through around art, and there's a question here: if someone doesn't have an arts background, or for example, they do design technology instead, could some of your work be added in the portfolio? And sort of another question that maybe we might touch on with that as well is, how would you recommend filling a portfolio with projects for university applications if you don't take art at school? I think you have touched on this within your presentations, but Beth, could I come to you first, just because of your experience of being an art teacher? Are sort of work that you produce within DT or something else, is that as, important or relevant or helpful?
I think I mean, depending on what background you come from, I think I would always recommend to try and do an art foundation before you go and apply to university, if you haven't got lots of art experience, because I think having an interest is enough to explore. Within that year, they really push you into lots of different areas, all the different specialisms, so you can get more varied documentation down, and maybe pick up some of the more basic techniques and drawing skills. So it really does depend on your background, but I would definitely say that any art and design subject is just as valid as the next, because the design cycle is pretty similar in most areas of art and design. you go through the concept stage, design development, and work your way around into refining an idea, and then reflect on it and go through the whole process again. And you would have done that in DT, just like you would in fine art, for example. So yes, it's definitely worth putting that work in. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So yes, make sure you include your work from DT in your portfolio. And I think that one about sort of filling your portfolio with projects for university applications, if you don't take art, Anna, you mentioned in your presentation about just getting out and about and doing those sketches. I feel like that sort of is a way of getting content for that portfolio. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you have, if you're wanting to go into the kind of design professions, you must have a passion for it, even if you didn't take art for A level or GCSE. So as you have that passion, you just need to kind of play on that. So yes, any opportunity you have to show off some elements of or different elements of skills would be great. So if sketching is not your thing, that, like I said in the presentation, photography can be just as powerful, because that's still representing 3D and 2D format. Using your hands modeling is another great way. So, you know, and that could be as simple as plasticine, or it can be using cardboard, or it can be using the more like sophisticated modeling techniques, clay, or yeah. So I think anything that you can do. I guess the downside for you is that you won't be doing it in school, so you have to do it after school. So, you know, you just have to make sure you're pushing yourself and have that motivation. But like I said, if you have the passion, then that should shine through. I just want to make another point on the D&T. Well, it's actually really what Beth said at the end. But I think that D&T is possibly just as relevant, if not more in a way, because with that, you always have a brief that you then develop, as Beth was saying, as concept design. So it's really showing off your response to a brief, which is exactly what we do on our day-to-day work. So yes, having a little booklet maybe of your D&T work showing each project is a great way of showing how you process and move through the design phases.
Thank you for that. So I'm kind of getting a lot from all three of you that it's really important to show that process as well, especially by including some sketching that you've done in the kind of thought process developing up to your final image stage. Someone's asked, are sketches the most valuable in a portfolio? But again, I'm sort of sensing that not necessarily. Nicola, what do you think?
I think there often is an emphasis perhaps on drawing, but definitely not necessarily that has to be the way to go. I certainly wouldn't put one technique in because you felt you have to, when you actually had another one that you were stronger at, because I think that will be reflected, because remember, it's your best work. So really try and play to your strengths, because at the end of the day, that's what you're going to be good at and that's what you're going to enjoy. So you want to get that across more. So I think I would always, like, I didn't come from an artistic background, but I've always been comfortable sort of freehand sketching. So they might not be the best sketches, but I've always been comfortable doing it. And that's just because you kind of practice over time. So I think that's why people say just practice, practice, practice. And not all of those sketches are going to go into your portfolio, but you're still building up that skill over time, because it is a long sort of process, if you like. You're not expected to have all the skills when you leave school, because you're going to university to develop those skills as well. So yeah, I think get sketching and drawings in. What I was trying to say in my presentation is there's lots of different types of drawing. Sketching is just sort of one form of that. So perhaps explore that other, perhaps you might prefer a more technical drawing where you're sort of realistically recording the sizes in relation to each other of an object, rather than textures or other observational things, or the light and shade and things like that. There's sort of different angles that you can come at. So I think, you know, someone like that, maybe have a word with your art teacher and see what their advice would be, and almost just get started.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. That's really, really helpful. A really great response there as well. And it kind of taps into someone else's question who was mentioning that they do have some artistic abilities. So what would be good to show? But I'm sensing just the things that you have some strength in, and whether that's collage or sketching or painting, just choose the one you feel that you have some great strength in and can really shine through your portfolio.
Yeah, but I would try and have some variety in there as well.
Yes, sorry, you did mention that. Yeah, variety, but make sure you're showing off your strength. Yeah,
not feeling the need to include a painting and some textile work and some graphic just because they're all on the list, because the list is there to sort of, there's something for everyone rather than you have to tick all of these boxes. But yeah, things that are relevant to design and making. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm conscious of time, so we'll sort of wrap up the session soon. There's a question that's come up a few times that we've not touched on, and it's more of a general question really, but it's talking about extracurricular activities and whether the panel have any recommendations as to what might be quite good to do as extracurricular to help with those applications or CV writing perhaps, or something that's going to be maybe useful or relevant for a career in the built environment. Anna, Beth, Nicola?
Okay, I can start.
Yeah.
So traditionally I would have said work experience is brilliant, but I know it's very hard to come by at the moment. There are practices, we are a practice that offer virtual, like we've got a virtual design academy, so I'm sure there are others that you can apply to do work experience, and then you do it all online, and you don't have to come into the office. But that would be a really great talking point. It would also develop a little booklet of information that you can also share as part of your portfolio. If you can't get work experience, I think we've touched a lot on sort of sketching. I did what's it called? Drawing, art. Oh, why can't I remember? Life drawing,
yeah. Okay, it's like a hobby that you did in the free time.
Yeah. So I did a class of life drawing every week, and that was really great because it developed my sketching abilities. I used loads of different mixed media, and it just makes you more confident in drawing things quickly and kind of getting your thoughts across. So they would be my suggestions.
Thank you. Does anyone have something to add, Beth?
I would just back up the idea of just trying to get out to communicate with people. I think it's great what you're doing here on Placed, because just trying to talk about your work, it's really good practice to talk about your work, because it can be so embarrassing for everybody, and I don't think that ever goes away. You always feel slightly exposed when you're talking about your ideas. So the more you can do that, the better. So whether that's through work experience at a practice, or whether it's through having a group of people who you just decide that you're going to have a weekly catch up with, where you can have a seminar about something you've done, or if you all have, maybe set yourself the same task to go and do and just see how everyone else responds. I think the more you can talk, the more used to it you'll get, and that just, I think it brings you on leaps and bounds communication skills. So I would really work on those if you can in any way.
Great, thank you for that advice. Nicola, do you have anything or?
No, I think I'd echo what the other two said. The only other thing I would perhaps say is that architecture and design is sort of so wide ranging. So finding out which aspects of it you really enjoy or you're interested in, I think is helpful. So yeah, I would suggest that, but I agree very much with networking and any sort of the other creative abilities. I did ceramics at university, but it wasn't something I did until I got to university. So yeah, always try and learn new skills.
Thank you so much. It's been really inspirational listening to all three of you, and really insightful, and just heaps of advice about putting together a portfolio, what to put in it, how to best capture your work, layout, so much information. If any young people need to re-watch this to remember everything, because I feel like it was full of loads of really useful tips and advice, then it will be available on our website shortly after this event. thank you all for coming, and thank you to our fantastic panel. We have one more session of Placed Insights next Monday, and then we will have finished our 10-week programme. So young people on the call, if you have a chance to fill out our survey at the end of this call, that would be really helpful for us to get an idea of how you found the programme too. Otherwise, thank you so much. Have a lovely evening. Goodbye.